Beat Devils Wednesday. This is the State of the Fan address titled Rangers Have No Heart, H-A-R-T. Streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitter Live, and Twitch on the Primetime Radio Network. I'm your host, Sam Woo, here with Pucks and Pitchforks blog editor-in-chief Nick Villano. As the game is going on right now in Toronto, but there is a lot of stuff to talk about right now about your New Jersey Devils, about trade deadline, how that's going to affect the future. Nico Dawes making a second back-to-back starts. He's in Toronto right now. PK Subban not traded. Okay. Beating the Rangers, beating Shesterkin, beating him up so badly, exposing him. Big things happening, Nick. Big things happening here with Devils fans.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's been, it's been an interesting week because obviously the Rangers game was one of the best games I've seen all year. You know, that's huge for us to finally, for all the factors there, ending a 7 or 8 game losing streak against our biggest rival, beating them for the first time this season, which obviously, getting 5 past Shesterkin, which might be the new motto, 5 past Igor. Love it. Let's make that the hashtag of the cinch. Also on top of that, just what the team looked like yesterday after a pathetic road trip to Western Canada, losing 3 games in a row by the same 6-3 score. It seems almost impossible, but it happened. Seeing Nico Dawes at least come back to, average to slightly below average instead of just being terrible like he was in Canada. And then on top of that, you have the trade deadline where the Devils made one move for, the Hamburglar. Andrew Hammond's coming to New Jersey. And here's the thing. I'm going to touch on we're going to get to the Rangers game in a minute. I want to touch on the trade deadline just because there's a lot to talk about there. I don't think it was the fact that the Devils' assets aren't worth what a lot of the other assets are going for. It's that the type of assets that the Devils have, you either get a team who desperately wants them and overpays for it, a la Blake Coleman. Blake Coleman didn't have a big, there weren't suitors lined up out the door for Blake Coleman. There was the Tampa Bay Lightning who valued him very high. And that's the same thing for Hagel. Yeah. I mean, Hagel had a lot of suitors, actually, but Hagel's, the Tampa Bay Lightning just valued him very high. And I don't think that's the same for Severson or Zaka or, Tatar or Janssen or Johnson or whatever, I don't think that was the case. People, what happened with Ben Sherratt is that the Montreal Canadiens, and credit to them, put a first-round tender on him, or not tender, they put a first-round valuation on him, and they kept it for the rest, for the entire time, for months. They're like, no, first-round pick plus. I want more than a first-round pick. And they eventually got it. They have to wait a little while to get it, but oh, no, wait, that's the Drew trade. They did get it. So they got a first-round pick plus a fourth-round pick. A lot of people would have taken that straight up for Severson, but the Devils have a higher valuation for Severson. He's got an extra year in his contract, and he's not the kind of defenseman that a team like a playoff team wants right now. He's the kind of a defenseman that they want to build around during the season. So the deals weren't there. People weren't. The reason why Tom Fitzgerald's phone wasn't calling is because he didn't have the right pieces to help playoff teams right this second. Playoff teams they don't want to add superstars. They don't want to add, offensive defensemen. They don't want to add, sometimes the type of player they want to add is a Zaka, but they don't want to pay what it would cost to get Zaka right now. So it's not that the Devils don't have valuable assets. They absolutely do. You see, The Devils, only one team in the entire league has scored 7 goals more times than the Devils this season. That's Colorado. So it shows that this team has value. There's value to this team. This team can score. This team is fast. This team has a lot of skill. But obviously, the goaltending situation is why they are where they are in the standings. They tried. I mean, they're not addressing it really with Hammond. They're just they showed tonight that they can't play John Gillies. It's a back-to-back. Dawes just faced 35 shots and allowed 4 goals, and they're still playing him in the back-to-back. He's playing well so far, so that's good. But it shows that they have zero faith in Gillies to do anything. They don't think he could stop the puck, and facing a high-powered offense like Toronto, I don't think that the Devils had much of a chance going in. They kept them scoreless in the first, but they allowed 11 shots to just 3, and a lot of those shots were scary. So.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see what happens in the second. The second was where they woke up last night, too. So maybe it'll happen again. And puck just dropped on the second a few minutes ago. Anyway, I don't think that you should take anything out of the trade deadline. Don't overreact to the trade deadline. The Devils didn't make any bad trades, and that's the only time you should really overreact to the trade deadline is when they make bad trades. Making no trades is not necessarily bad. The only unrestricted free agent you had is PK Subban. It's sad they got nothing out of him. It is. But what are you going to do about it? Teams didn't want to take on that salary. They didn't even want to take on $4 million. How many $4 million players were traded this year?
Not many.
You had to get another team involved to get his cap hit down to around $2.25 million. And what are teams going to trade for it? So if you're going to get a first, or say you're going to get a 3rd round pick for Subban, right? Now you have to find another trade to get involved. So you have to trade a 5th round pick to that team to take on the salary. Well, is that now worth it? You're basically trading up from the 5th to the 3rd round and losing an asset. I probably would have done it personally, but the Devils didn't feel like there was value in that, so they didn't do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's one of those things. I think that, I've said this over and over and over again the last 2 or 3 days, and I said this last week. I just think that Fitzgerald should stand pat, and he did. He did. And you know what? He didn't mortgage the future. He didn't do anything stupid.
Yeah.
He was patient. And that's what he did. And we should appreciate that. That he didn't mess up the chemistry again. The naysayers would say, well, what chemistry? This team sucks. Well, the team is developing. They've got their offensive skills been pretty consistent. They've been scoring more than three or more games quite often.
Yeah.
Something we couldn't
I don't
say.
think chemistry is definitely not the problem here. This isn't the John Hines team. The John Hines team, chemistry was the number 1 problem. This isn't that. Lindy Ruff, I give him a lot more flack than you do. And I will evaluate his performance later, but the one thing he doesn't do is he's not hurting this team's chemistry. He keeps lines together. He keeps the team in a good position when it comes to building that chemistry. So I got to give him credit for that. He lets lines build. He lets teammates build a foundation. So it's definitely not chemistry.
Yeah, but you didn't let me finish.
Sorry. I'm bad at that.
They fixed the power play. For the most part, they fixed the penalty kill. There's still a lot of work needs to be done, but it's gotten a lot better. They have an offense that's very potent, but also, most importantly, now he's talking about team defense, which I've been complaining about since day one. A commitment to it. So, you know what? I think right now it's a step-by-step approach. They fix one problem at a time. As much as we want it to be faster, I just don't want to see 1 or 2 good years and then regress back to, okay, we're going to be rebuilding for the next 5-6 years. I want a dynasty at this point. And if you're going to do it, go all the way.
Dynasty is a hard, but a consistent winner is definitely something that's in the works.
I have high expectations, Nick.
Let's say we went through this 10-year stretch, right? If I told you it was all going to be worth it, how many Stanley Cups do you expect to see in the next 10 years?
Well, at least 1, 2.
That's what I was going to ask. Will one suffice? Will one say they win the Stanley Cup in 2025 and not again in the Jack Hughes? Well, I don't want to say the Jack Hughes again. Not again before 2030.
Just one?
Will this all be worth it?
I think so. It's hard to win the Stanley Cup. It's hard. It's not that easy. Some teams haven't even won it. Look at Toronto right now, speaking of them. It's been since 67, and when they were winning it, there were only a handful of teams in the league. So,
same with the Rangers. The Rangers have only won the Rangers have won 1 since they lost the original 6, right? Is it?
Yeah.
Since they got out of that era?
Yeah.
The Rangers have won 1. Even like a team like Boston hasn't won a ton. They won the 1 in 2011. I'm not steeped in their history, but looking back, like when was the last time they won before 2011?
I think it was 72.
I mean, 1 Stanley Cup since 1972 from a team as consistently good as Boston. Like, think about that. It is hard. And if they win that 1 Stanley Cup in 2025, let's say, it's just going to keep hitting that number. If they win that 1 Stanley Cup, I think it'll be worth it. I loved that 2012 run so much, Sam. I loved it so much that I felt going all in for those years was worth the immediate, rough kind of go of it. I'll call it the Lou Lamoriello rebuilding years, where he didn't rebuild at all.
Nick,
and the Devils just scored. Jack Hughes just scored on the power play. Devils
Nick,
up 1-0.
I was giving you a thumbs up, but you were looking at your TV.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm on ESPN Plus, so I'm a little behind. There's usually like a minute delay or 30-second delay. So, but Severson scored. I thought it was Hughes. My bad. But yeah, no, I think that when you look at expectations of what you need, that was a fun goal. It hit off a defenseman's butt. It looks
Save it for after the game.
Sorry. I'm not doing a play-by-play. I'm just talking about butts. We're talking about butts on the Devils podcast.
Yeah.
No, and I think that the expectation needs to be get 1. Obviously, the expectation is we get to the playoffs. We have to get to the playoffs. Because once we get to the playoffs, then the fun really begins. I had so much fun in that 2018 season getting to the playoffs, all those games actually mattering. It's just been, and me and Sam talked about this, and I got to give you guys credit because you guys have stuck with us through, not only our stuff, but like the Devils just being a nightmare every single freaking week. And every week you give us, you give us credit. You give us, you read my blog. You listen to our podcast. You listen to Sam on the Woo Report every day. You stick by us, even though this team is just honestly probably bad for our mental health. When it comes right down to it, there's times where I'm like, oh, man, it's like,
I know.
Why does this keep happening to me? So it's kind of interesting. But I do want to get to a positive. I want to get to that Rangers game, Sam. What were your thoughts? What were your initial thoughts watching that game?
They came out so bad in the first period. I mean, and that's the stuff that just drives you crazy because you know that they have that talent. You know that they have that speed to kill, and they're just not unleashing it. Dano said early in the first period, what did Lindy Ruff say? Use your God-given talent. your speed. I'm pleading with you. And they responded. And that's, you know what? He still has control of this team despite the record. They are committed to him. They're committed to making this work. They're not down and out. And Nico Dawes, being the comeback kid that he is, was able to stay poised, not rattled as a rookie goaltender, because this is his second professional season in his career at any level, and to come back and win that
it's
game.
His first North American professional season. He had that last year was weird. He was in the German league, and he was the backup to a former NHL guy. It was a very strange season.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, there's a lot of positives to take out of that game, but what they still need to do, it's good that they were able to wake up from their sleepwalking, is what Scotty would say, and they made it right. Whereas in the past, it took a few games of losing before they figured it out. At least they figured it out in game, and that's what we've seen this season. That they do have that ability to come back, and that's important. That they don't have to play a trap because they don't have the ability. Now they have the ability. Now it's a matter of, can they use that same ability offensively, defensively, pickpocketing. Nico Hischier had a nice pickpocket. Transition game, boom, Devils score last game. So, again, these are all positives. I don't want to oversell it, but the bottom line is you beat the Rangers, you beat a very good goalie, and and I said on the Woo Report, and I said this on Game Day Live, and I'll say it again: the Devils are building the foundation for a dynasty. Okay, they are putting the foundation. That's sustainable. Look at what the Pittsburgh Penguins have done with Malkin and Crosby, who the Devils are sort of modeled after. Okay, and Tom Fitzgerald and Ray Shero were a part of. It does take time for the Penguins. From 2003 to probably about 2008, they started to turn around. Maybe 2007, around that time. And, with Malkin and Crosby, and just everything started to come together. They almost lost the team in bankruptcy, all that kind of stuff. But they were able to make it happen against the Detroit Red Wings. And then they won 2 other cups afterwards, a little bit later, under a different GM. So think about that. Just the Devils just take 2. Unfortunately, Ray Shero couldn't get it done. Parted ways. Tom Fitzgerald, we still haven't seen the fruits of his labor during a pandemic, no less. So,
yeah.
And that's not an excuse. It's just a reality. Give it some time with Tom because we haven't seen it yet. I wouldn't judge him right now at this point.
Yeah, and here's the thing: is that say what you want about the goalie situation, Fitzgerald has addressed it twice. 2 things completely out of his control happened. Maybe the only thing I think of is there's something that he didn't address in the Corey Crawford signing. Maybe he didn't, figure out his mindset, get into his head a little bit more. That's the only thing I think of that he could have done with Corey Crawford, because he just abruptly retired.
And that's not good.
He lost the passion for the game, and that happens. The number 1 tennis player in the world just abruptly retired because she just lost the passion for the game. There's nothing you can do about it. It just happens. And, honestly, the Devils probably dodged a bullet with all the stuff that came out about the 2010 Blackhawks. So, but we don't need to talk about that. And then there's Bernier, who got a hip injury. Corey Schneider was statistically the best goalie of all time, Sam. He had the greatest save percentage ever before he got that hip injury. And then you saw what happened. He became the worst goalie in the NHL.
Yeah.
Hip injuries come out of nowhere, and they strike fast and hard. I will say, I don't like how Lindy Ruff has dealt with the injuries of our goalies this year. Playing Blackwood as long as he did on an injured ankle that needed months worth of recovery was counterintuitive. I understand that he didn't have much of a choice, but he did have some choices. He could have played Schmid. He could have played. I think Dawes was injured at the time, so he couldn't have played Dawes, but he could have played Schmid. You know, you figure it out, I guess. I think Craig Anderson was out there at the time. He eventually signed with Buffalo. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but there was options. What really should have happened is the Devils should have never put Scott Wedgwood on waivers. That was always a terrible idea.
Yeah.
It was always just you lost your leverage, and I forgot why they did it. I think somebody was coming back. Maybe it was to bring Hughes back from injury. I'm not 100% sure, but putting him on waivers was absolutely the worst idea that Fitzgerald made this season. And it's really hurt them ever since. I don't think this is a playoff team with Scott Wedgwood, but I think some of the pathetic performances that you're stuck with, if we're looking at Dawes and Wedgwood right now, this team is looking much better on a nightly basis. But unfortunately, that's not the situation at hand. It is what it is. You kind of have to move on. I will say that I think this team is in a good spot overall. I think the Devils are in a good spot for what they are. They're not in a good spot because they're in last place in the Metropolitan Division, and they just came off a road trip where they lost every game 6-3. So that part of it, I didn't like that, Sam. But when it comes to the structure of the roster, it's in a good spot and it's a bad spot. Let me throw something at you, and you tell me what you think of the situation, right? So we were talking with I was talking with the rest of the Pucks and Pitchforks writers about and a couple of the Devils fans that are I have often conversations with, and we were talking about what the Devils should do next year to fix the forward positions, right? What can we do to upgrade? Yep. What's that going to look like? When you look at the forwards, based on who's what contracts are coming up and what contracts are restricted, what contracts aren't. The Devils have one open forward position in the starting lineup. Because if you do, let's say you do Hughes, Mercer, Sharangovich, then you do Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, and Alexander. Let's say Holtz comes up, and then you have Boquist, Tatar, and Janssen, and then you have Wood, Bastian, and McLeod. That's the lineup for next year. Next year's lineup is already, and I didn't even did I bring up Zacha? I didn't even bring up Zacha. Right? Did I forget Zacha? Wow. So taking this, the Devils have 12 NHL skaters already signed next year, not including Alexander Holtz. The Devils are in a spot where they got to move people this offseason. They have to make moves. So I think you're going to see a lot of structural changes because the Devils need them. Because I don't think you could go into the season not having a spot for Alexander Holtz clearly labeled. I don't think you could go into next season with Zacha, Janssen, and Tatar again. I don't think you can. I think you need to find a change of scenery for Janssen. And I think that's Arizona because they've shown interest in him. You sell him for whatever they'll take for him. I don't think you have to give him away like you did with Will Butcher. But I think they'll be willing to give up a low-round pick for him. And then you got Tatar, who's actually been better than his numbers say. His counting numbers don't show a very good player, but he's been fine, I'll say. I'm not going to tell you he's good. He's been good. But I'm going to tell you that there are signs that say he's going to bounce back next year. And then you got Zacha, who I think is out the door. I honestly do. I think they're going to get the Besser deal done next year or this offseason before next year. I think Zacha is going to be a centerpiece. I think you're going to see 2 mid-level prospects and then maybe a second or third round pick. This Besser deal is not going to cost as much as you think because that contract is a burden. And then if you get Besser, Sam, that brings up a question. You know who might the one name that I'm really paying attention to in this offseason, Sam? Really paying attention to is Igor Sharangovich. Teams love when a player overplays his draft value and then they can move him for massive assets. Do I think that they could get massive assets for Sharangovich? No, but they could get good assets. Is a team willing to spend a first-round pick on a 24-year-old who can score? Is a team willing to throw in a really good prospect for a 24-year-old who could score? Now we're getting there. You know, I think the Devils are in a spot, or maybe you just make a hockey trade. Maybe Sharangovich becomes the centerpiece for the Besser trade. So it's a 1-for-1 reset on that first line, and then you trade Zacha for parts somewhere else. You know, I think there's value here. I think there's value for a lot of these players. I think the forward group is in a place where you can make major money moves. I think the Devils are going to be the most active trade team this offseason because they have to. Not only, you know, they have $24 million in cap space. So, Sam, they could sign all their players and they'll be in good shape.
Yep.
But you want to upgrade the goaltender position. You want to replace Subban. The Devils are just in such a weird spot. They're full at forward. They have one defensive spot open, and if it goes to Riley Walsh, they have none. They have two goalies who are signed for next season, and they're both hurt. They're just in such a strange spot. And I don't know if I envy Tom Fitzgerald because he has to make 10 to 15 hard decisions this offseason. What do you do with Justin Bratt? How much do you give him? Do you give him 7? What if he asks for 8? Do you give him more than Nico Hischier? I don't think you do. I think you give him 7. And then how many years? This is the first year he's looked like a point-per-game player. Do you give him 8 years for that? Or do you give him 6? Or do you give him 2? Do you risk it? See, you know, he's also a player who held out and missed NHL games. We forget that because it happened over a year ago. But Jesper Bratt missed NHL games because he didn't get the price he wanted. It's a reality of the situation. And now we see what he's doing.
Didn't Zacha do the same thing?
No, Zacha didn't miss games. Zacha threatened to go to the KHL, and Ray Sherro, in true, this is when you had the famous, we love Ray Sherro because he's Jersey.
Oh,
he was
that's
he
right.
could go to effing Russia if he wants. We still own his rights. So that was pretty funny back in the day. So yeah, you have two players who are on restricted free agency who have in the past shown hostile negotiation tactics. I think that the Devils are going to get those done actually pretty quickly, especially the Bratt one. I don't think they're going to waste a lot of time on Bratt because they don't want an upset Bratt. They want Bratt to be full go, ready to get it. They're willing to overspend a little. They're not willing to spend more than they did on Hughes, and they're not willing to spend – I don't think they're willing to spend more than they did on Hischier. I think those two contracts are going to be like, you know, I think he's going to pull a Joe Sakic with what he did with McKinnon for all those years and say nobody's going to make more than McKinnon. I think Fitz is going to look at it. You know, he gave Dougie Hamilton the $9 million deal, but he recognized the difference between unrestricted free agency and you know, restricted free agency. I think when it comes to this core, I think he says long-term deals, nobody makes more than Hughes, and most people don't make more than Hischier. So that's what I think they're going to do.
I think with Bratt, if I were him, I don't know what's going on in his head. I have to. Sorry, I have to save it for the next podcast. But yeah, it sucks. I just saw that. But now I lost my train of thought. Thanks a lot, Nick.
I hate shorthanded goals against. This power play is garbage.
Turning it over in the neutral zone, Sharangovich. Here we go again.
Yeah. I mean, we could get into it in the next podcast, but that was
Well,
100%.
I just don't understand what, I guess this is different philosophy from mine and Lindy Ruff, but I'm all about if it's there, take it. If it's not, dump the puck in, reset. Because it's just you have a 1-0 lead. Why chance it? Dump the puck. You're going in the middle of the neutral zone. You want to own the middle of the ice. Both ways. Defensively and offensively. And if it's not there, dump it down and start banging against the boards and get the puck, get the cycle going. That's hockey. But it's just too risky how the Devils are playing, and it just annoys me. But getting back to Jesper Bratt, if I was him, being in his shoes, Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier will help him make him a longtime superstar in New Jersey. He's got the supporting cast. He knows the organization. He's going to make his money. I think 6.8, 6.5, 6.8. Maybe give him an extra year, 4 years, instead of a long term.
Oh no, I want to lock him up. If we're gonna do this, let's lock him up. If we're gonna go that high, if we're gonna go 6.8, I want at least 6 years.
At least 6 years?
Yeah,
that's a long time.
Yeah, and it's a risk. I understand that. You can end up with the Kyle Okposo contract, or
Well, what I would like is the captain to lead the team with Jesper Bratt with him.
Yeah. Sorry, we got distracted again. More goals.
Yeah.
Hopefully you took the over on this game, folks. So I think the barrage is coming.
Yeah. The second period blitz.
Yeah. But yeah, here you go. I think that when it comes to Bratt, if I'm Fitzgerald, I'm trying to sign him now. I don't even want to get to the offseason. Just sign him now. Because I feel like him seeing what this team could be, instead of waiting until the offseason to where he can reevaluate, I think it only helps the team to talk to him now. It only helps the team to be like, hey, what do you think you're worth? And let him do it while he's in the middle of this team. He just saw Jack Hughes sign a new contract. He's probably going to ask for the Hughes contract and then go from there. And the Devils are probably going to offer him like the Camilleri contract and go from there. And I think that they'll find a happy medium. I think it's going to be 7, Sam. I think it's going to be 7.
7 and 6.
Yeah.
$42 million.
6 for 7.
So you've got locked long-term Dougie Hamilton, Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, and Jesper Bratt.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you got to look at what's next.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. I told you to take the over. Here's the 3 things that I think they're going to explore in the offseason.
You know what sucks is when your feed is faster than mine. I have no idea what you're talking about.
My feed's usually slower than everybody else's, but the Devils usually tweet at me, or like I have their tweet notifications on, so I usually get their tweet before I even see the goal, one way or the other. So that's always I usually have to put my phone away because that always annoys me. The 3 players I think the Devils are going to really take a look at this offseason are Besser. I think they're going to go back on Tarasenko because we stopped talking about this. But Vladimir Tarasenko was very much on their radar. The question that we have never been able to answer is where Tarasenko would accept a trade here. Nobody said he wouldn't. Nobody said he would. That seemed to be very much up in the air. So that part is still obviously going to be up in the air. But I think a Blues-Devils trade is definitely something that makes sense. And the other one is Patrick Laine. We've been here before. We'll be here again until Patrick Laine's situation settles down. He is the scorer that the Devils could absolutely use. He is not good defensively. Actually, I don't know. I haven't paid attention to his defensive metrics with Columbus, but in the past, he's been bad defensively, and that's going to frustrate whatever coach he plays for. But as of right now, he's the scoring that the Devils need. I would rather have Besser and Tarasenko before him, but it's definitely on the table. What do you think of those three names, Sam?
They seem so impossible to get. But Tarasenko,
Impossible?
I just don't, maybe not impossible, just I don't really believe the Devils would get them. I don't think they're ready yet to bring them on. I like for them to shore up the defense and shore up the goaltending before you start bringing high-priced elite caliber players like that on your team.
When you say shore up the defense, first of all, let me ask you this. Do you want them to replace Severson?
No.
Okay. So if you keep Severson next year, theoretically, you have a top four of Dougie Hamilton, Ryan Graves, Jonas Siegenthaler, and Damon Severson. So when you say shore up the defense, are you thinking that they replace one of those four?
No, I'm talking strategically. Everything things need to change. I mean, some of the, and I've been over this millions of times, and Bryce pointed it out. I talk about the NFZ. Bryce Salvador pointed out yesterday's game. Ryan Graves, just these undisciplined plays, leaves the crease after two different breakdowns in the defensive zone. For what reason? Just to leave the Rangers wide open in the high danger area, the slot area, and they score.
Yeah, and Severson on that first goal, I think it was the first goal, was just he turned the puck over and then stood to the side of the net where he really was just a non-factor. I don't know what he was trying to do. I think he was trying to get into a passing lane, but he missed the passing lane.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So
those plays have to go.
So what I mean by shore up the defense, and I want to clarify what I mean, it's not replacing players. It's more of what Fitzgerald talked about, team commitment. A good defense, bad things happen all the time. And I'll use the Stanley Cup Devils as an example. Scott Stevens and Scott Niedermayer were not perfect. Neither was Brian Rafalski. Bruce Driver, none of them were perfect. But they all had one thing in common. They always had each other's backs. So when plays break down, unfortunate bounces, that you have another defenseman, your partner, slide in to compensate till you can get back into position and reset. And what happened last night in the first period was just one breakdown after another, which led to goals, the goals against. And, it goes back to like the Jacques Lemaire days. Now, he was overkill with it, but you really have to play disciplined defense if you're going to win in this league because, unlike 25 years ago, a lot of teams, even though they're bad as we are, they can score at any given moment. These are very skilled players right now. This is a skill league, not, the old brutal, bully, knock them down. I mean, there's still some of it. You still need some of that, but the more emphasis is on skill and speed right now in the league. So
it's kind of funny because they just teach players different, right? Like a player like Cam Jansen had skill, but he just used it differently. Today, they would make sure he knew how to score and he knew how to skate.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't just be a fighter anymore, if you want to play full time. Mason Geertsen, say what you want about him. again, he fulfills a role on the team, but really he's a part-time player in terms of playing time. You want like the Miles Wood that can irritate, get under the other team's skin, play with speed, can actually score. And to some extent, before last season, he was a little bit over the top. But now that, before his injury, he had slowed down the game in his head, has processed it, and really have become more of a productive player and not a liability for the Devils. Bad penalties, turning over the puck, overskating a play and then getting burnt, not getting back. That was the Miles Wood of old. And then last season, he played very well. He was very effective, both as a leader and a player and as a fighter. Those are the kind of players you need to have each other's back.
Yeah. This team has severely missed Miles Wood. Like that, this team has said it, and you could see it on the ice. There's just, especially when they had no Wood and no Bastion, because there's nobody hitting people. There's nobody really causing people to pay. Now you at least got Bastion. Bastion will get in your face. Gearston's in the lineup some nights. I don't think he's there tonight, right? I think they replaced him with DeLeo.
No, AJ Greer.
Greer, sorry.
Yep.
I get them mixed up all the time. I need to stop. But there was a stat that came up, like I think 2 months ago. It came out that the Devils allowed the easiest transition into the offensive zone of any team in the league. They just did not make you pay for getting to the offensive zone. And we just saw, I know you don't want to talk much about this game, but we did just see with that shorthanded goal that it all started with the Maple Leafs addressing the Devils as they try to enter the zone. And that led directly to a shorthanded goal. So that part of the game is definitely something they need to address. They need a little bit more. They need a hard-nosed scoring winger, which is kind of, it's hard to find. Everybody talks about, oh, you love Tom Wilson if he's on your team. It's like, well, I wouldn't like the concussions he causes. But, I understand the theoretical thought that having a guy who has the ability to score 30 goals, who can also make you pay every time you're on the ice, that is an ideal hockey player.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Sam.
What's that?
From what we saw yesterday, right? Let's talk about this. I know we keep touching on the Ranger game. We don't talk about it that much, but it's the title of the show, so we got to at least address the Ranger game. Do you think that was a sustainable model of winning the Devils show yesterday? Just basically trying to run the Rangers out of the room from the second period on. They won with forechecking and skill. And honestly, it reminded me a lot of that 2012 Devils team and how they won games. They won with forechecking. They won by causing turnovers. They beat teams with more skill because they caused that team with skill to turn the puck over all the time. So they would get advantageous chances. While the other team could make their own chances, the Devils were getting those chances based on their style of play. Do you think that works in today's game like it did yesterday?
Back in 2012, remember, swarm it up? That was the motto of Pete DeBoer. Based on yesterday, and I'm saying strictly yesterday, answering your question, the Devils' model is not sustainable. It's not sustainable. And the reason why, yes, there are good parts to that are sustainable, but you don't need to have a gun held to your head down 2-0, then start playing, finally playing 100%, and then, again, let your talent take over there. I think that's what happened. But also defensively, I mean, Nico Dawes gave up 4 goals, but he also had many great saves as well.
Yeah.
Yesterday he wasn't perfect, but he was just good enough to help the Devils win. So, again, is it sustainable? I think no. I don't think it is. What's sustainable is your defense is your best offense. If you can shut down the Rangers or any team on any given night, then your offense does not have to work as hard, because all you need, and I know this sounds so elementary, all you need is one more goal than the other team at the end of the day. 6-5 games, 7-5 games, that's not sustainable. I don't care who you are, it's not sustainable, because on any given night, if your shots are off, you hit the post 9 times, you could lose the game if you don't help out defensively. And I think that's what Tom Fitzgerald was trying to get at. The defense. And
Yeah.
I think they've got the personnel, and people would argue with me all the time. I think it was Andrew Gilchrist in the Facebook Live would say, "Well, we don't have talent." No, we just don't have. We don't have the consistency of the guys bought into the system. Some days they have it, some days they don't, and that's not sustainable. They need to have a full commitment and sacrifice stats, sacrifice whatever you need to do, sacrifice your body. But, but what's nice is about yesterday is they do have the talent to put 5 goals out of nowhere, and they've done it over and over. I won't say over and over again, but they've done it quite a few times this season, putting up 7 goals just like that.
Yeah.
Remember against Tampa?
Easy.
That comeback? Yeah.
Yeah.
The
comeback against
Colorado.
Tampa, the comeback against Colorado. Yeah, those 2 games.
These are elite teams.
Like yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But they shouldn't have to do that night in, night out. If you play good defense, hey, you know what? You don't have to score the 7 goals. You can score 4 goals.
Standing out. You know what stands out to me this year? We're facing a lot more starting goalies.
What's that?
Teams aren't playing their backups against us as much. They do sometimes. We're still a bad team. But more teams, we faced Shesterkin yesterday, and we lit them up. In that Colorado game, we were facing Kemper. In the, we see the starting goalie more often than we expect, or more often than we did last year. Last year, it just seemed like there was a lot of times where it was like, well, there's the backup again. There's Georgiev. There's Brian Elliott. There's, Martin Jones. Oh, there's the backup again. We just kept seeing the backups. Cam Talbot, there he is. There's Yaroslav Halak. Here we go. It just kept happening that we kept seeing the backups, and we still couldn't win. This year, they know if you put a lesser goalie in front of us, we're going to score goals. We're going to make you work harder. It's not going to be an easy night. And I think Toronto's seeing that right now. Toronto put Mrazek out there just a couple days after putting him on waivers, his first start since the Heritage Classic a couple weeks ago where he got lit up. And, the Devils have 2 goals in the second half of a back-to-back. And they've only allowed 2. I'm not doing play-by-play. I'm just saying that that's the situation at hand, is that, they've allowed 2 goals. This team could score. This team could put points on the board. And I think teams are starting to notice it. I think the Devils now are in a situation where, they are a threat to teams. Teams understand that, and teams are going to take them lightly.
Yeah. And that's a great point. When they played Tampa, they played the Rangers last night. I mean, you couldn't get a better goalie than Shesterkin this season to chase. And it's great that they have that ability, but I think we all want to see a sustainable model where it's rinse and repeat, interchangeable parts. Remember those terminologies under Lou?
Yeah.
back in the Stanley Cup
That was
teams,
definitely
because
losing.
it was kind of like a derogatory term, because I always thought that Breland, Madden, Pandolfo, Holik, these guys were just great players. They knew how to win, and they had each other's backs. It was a team concept, and I
To
think
be
we've
fair,
seen a lot. What's that?
sorry, I was just saying, to be fair, they were in the perfect system for those players. We saw when Holik left that another system did not work for him.
That's true. That's true. But at the same time, he was with New Jersey for so long that he may have been a little spoiled in the system a little bit. Some guys that had moved on, Bill Guerin did extremely well after the Devils. So even Jason Arnott as well. Trying to think of other players, but
Sikora had a good career in Pittsburgh.
Yep, with the Ducks.
Was he with Pittsburgh and the Ducks? Did he go to both places? I know we got traded to the Ducks, but
he was with the Ducks and with the Rangers.
Sikora was with the Rangers?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't think. When did Peter Sikora go to the Rangers?
I think 2005, 2006. Because I remember hitting him with the. I remember hitting him with the beach ball when he came out onto the ice, if I remember correctly.
Man, I don't remember that at all. I must have just blocked that. Yeah. Okay. And then he was on Edmonton. When was he on Edmonton?
I don't know. We should have him on the podcast. So,
what a strange career.
Yeah, and a friend of mine one time called me from L.A. and was like, my girlfriend just bought Peter Sikora's keyboard.
That's funny.
Really?
But yeah, he was basically out of the league for a couple of years there where he was, he was terrible. I mean, not terrible. He had 16 goals. He had 31 points for the Rangers. Oh, he must have got hurt because he only played 40 games. But he was terrible for Edmonton, a -20. And I'm not a big plus-minus guy, but -20 tells you something. And then he bounced back with Pittsburgh for the next couple of years. Was injured in Minnesota. Don't remember Minnesota either. Peter Sikora, what a career. We do have to have him on. We got to ask him. We don't have a lot of ex-players on because we haven't pushed for it. It's usually an off-season thing. We've had a couple. I'm going to start pushing for more Devils Legends. I think you should do the same. We got to get our name out there with the Devils Legends. And, we got to see what they have to say.
Aside from our big fan of the podcast, Chico Resch, he loves
Chico.
us.
We got Bruce Driver. Grant Marshall has been on. We've had Ryan Carter's been on. We've had a couple ex-Devils.
Yeah.
It's
yeah, you know what? Maybe that's what we should start doing is start pushing ex-Devils. We've had Cam Jansen on.
Cam Jansen, he was great. I loved his interview.
PL3 was our first big guest of a former Devil. And I kind of begged him to come on. I Facebook messaged him. It was like the biggest moment of our lives. Like, whoa. But I'll never forget getting Cam Jansen and trying to patch him in through the phones. Like, he's so intimidating and so cool at the same time that you just did not want to mess around with him, waste his time. Because I'm going to kill you. That's it, Sam.
Pretty much.
I'm just going to kill you.
He will. He'll do it on accident.
Hey, Nick, since we got a few minutes left, the game's going on, I want to ask you something. This is off the topic. Totally off the topic. It's a new trend that, I wasn't sure if it would ever work because of intellectual property rights. But on YouTube Live, especially Facebook Live, in-game conversation between fans while the game's going on. And then the Manning brothers, Eli and Peyton, do it for the NFL, kind of like another sub-channel to the game, an alternative. Yeah. Do you think that could be something of the future for the Let's Go Devils podcast one day where, it would be great if you could watch the game together, but we don't have those rights. But do you think it would
Yeah.
be something of commentary? Because we sort of do this with the State of the Fan Address, but we still gear it towards more of a podcast. We
Mm-hmm.
don't do the play-by-play. That's Kennedy's job. Plus, that's
Yeah.
Matt's job. Plus, it'd be
Yeah.
sort of
We love Matt. We
illegal.
love Kanji. We love both.
Yeah. But do you think it's something like you just have a round table and just discussing? Because the only issue with that is it doesn't really go simultaneous with the game. But the other
Mm-hmm.
the other day, I listened to Devil's Hockey Network, listening to Kelly Schultz and Erica Ayala,
Mm-hmm.
first female all digital broadcast in the history of the Devils, and I quite enjoyed it watching the play live and 3 minute delay, listening to what they had to say, even though they were doing play by play. Do you think that
Yeah.
would be the future? Because I see a lot of it on YouTube with random fans, and some of the content is either funny or it's really bad. But somehow there's like 500,000 people chatting at the same time.
I think the future is more like what Steve Dangle does. I
Okay.
think, and it's what we're doing. Instant reaction. People want to talk about the game. They want to hear somebody else talk about a game, especially if it goes terribly. They want to see that reaction, especially if you have a history of reacting like Steve Dangle does.
Yeah.
If you're yelling, screaming, and complaining, then you have a chance to get famous off of that. And look at Steve Dangle. Like, Steve Dangle is the best at what he does. And he's somebody I'd love to get on the podcast. I think I asked him once. I forgot, but he did not say yes. He didn't say no. And Sam, there is one person in the history of this podcast who said no. Like, just straight up said no when I asked them. Most people just ignore me or try to reschedule. But
He said
and
no.
I won't reveal who that is. But
We'll talk about
everybody
it off air.
else, yeah, everybody else, just either ignores me completely, which probably smart, or tries to reschedule, and then eventually I kind of get over it and I move on with my life. Anyway, I think that the future is that instant reaction. The Devils tried to do it. We love Chris Westcott, friend of the podcast here, but I don't know. It just seems like it's missing something.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we could discuss that at another time. But, because that's how Devils After Dark, believe it or not, was born. Last season, we had Grant Marshall open the season with us on the podcast. And we were like, oh, well, since we're all up right now, we're all sitting around, this is still in the heart of the pandemic. All right, just leave your equipment on. We'll just do a post game, and then another post game, and another post game, and then suddenly Scotty was like, "Sorry, Sam, I got to work late, like tonight." And yeah, well, you know what? Maybe we'll just do something. I don't know, 2 a.m. Devils After Dark, and that's how that game. That's how that name came about. It was like, hey, I like that.
There you go.
So, yep. All right. Well, Nick, it was a pleasure.
It was. We have a lot of pucksandpitchforks.com today. So I gave you a reason why the Devils should look into the Evgeny Dadonov trade. Even though he can't play for the rest of the season, the Devils should still look into this possibility of saving the Vegas Golden Knights. But it'll cost them. We also have a lot of trade deadline coverage. I have the 5 things Tom Fitzgerald needs to do in the offseason now that he didn't make the moves during the trade deadline. Vinny Parisi talked about last night's game. I gave you, if you want to watch us score 5 goals on Igor Shesterkin again and again, and it was actually 6 goals on Igor Shesterkin, but we won't talk about that. Again and again and again, just go to pucksandpitchforks.com. make that a bookmark and just watch those 5 goals. We put them all in one place for you. Just hit play and watch them again and again and again, and feel good about your life. Feel good about it being Wednesday, Devils Wednesday, and you'll have a good time. But that's on puckspitchforks.com. And then later this week, I got a trade idea that would fix the Devils' goaltending situation, give them one of the best in the league, but it's going to cost them a lot. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to see what it would cost. We're going to see which teams would actually be willing to part with their best in the league goalie, and we'll go from there.
Oh, very nice. Well, enjoy the game, everybody that's listening right now. I want to thank all those tuning in to our in-game commentary podcast called State of the Fan Address. But there will be Devils After Dark very soon, in about a half an hour. We may have a mystery fill-in guest. We're still trying to work things out. Things are happening behind the scenes. Stay here. Go to pucksandpitchforks.com. Till next time, let's go Devils.